Good thing you brought that up. Nikola Tesla was trying to do the right thing for everybody, and he was working with some people that weren't so savory. J.P. Morgan was funding him. J.P. Morgan was told by his advisor that Nikola Tesla wanted to give away free electricity. That wasn't the case. Nikola Tesla set up a power transmitting system that used digital pulsing patterns that would match a receiver. He could meter the power being sent to a particular customer. What he could not control, however, was the non-Hertzian energy gain on the receiver. So somebody could pick up 10% more power, 20% more power, up to 100%. So, or 100 times, actually, was what he had claimed. Well, J.P. Morgan's advisor said he wanted to give away free electricity. J.P. Morgan cut off his funding. That was pretty much the end of everything Tesla at that point. He went into seclusion. He did do some work for the United States government, and he died a lonely man. So he tried to do the right thing, and he was pretty much punished for it because he didn't feel it was right to charge the customer for the extra power that was coming in. Besides, with non-Hertzian energy, there's no way to put a meter on that. You can meter the regular power, but you're not going to meter the non-Hertzian component that's coming in with it. If your technology can accept it, it will. If it doesn't accept it, it won't. In our modern era, now he didn't have to deal with this, so our semiconductors that are common today, silicon, are incompatible with non-Hertzian energy. Certain dopings can, like the silicon carbide, can interact to a limited extent, but most burn out. You have to specifically know what semiconductors you can use, what capacitors you can use, what resistors you can use, and what diodes that you can use with this stuff, because most components will burn out when exposed to this. Also, last year, I spoke about John Bedini and his brother. Him and his brother had passed, about his method of using magnetism to approach this non-symmetry and how inefficient that is. You can only get like a 10% energy gain from that. Whereas the method I use, which is essentially sending electric fields, pulsing electric fields, you can get much greater interaction with the non-Hertzian using that methodology. The pulses travel down the wire. I'll go over this again. As the pulses travel down the wire, the domains in the wire line up. As they line up, you get a response, a magnetic pulse, right? Well, that's when current begins to flow, then symmetry is established. So if you can stop symmetry from being established, you can break symmetry. So you can pierce that barrier between the Hertzian and the non-Hertzian realm. So,
How do you stop it? How do you stop that symmetry?
by stopping either the electric field or stopping the magnetic field from being created. Caduceus coils do not do that. As much as they self-cancel, they don't really break symmetry because the field is still being created. It's being canceled, but it's still being created. So you have to do it with a method that actually breaks symmetry. I wish there was more I could go into, but unfortunately, I'm privy to a bunch of classified information that I cannot share.
But we can discover it on our own.
Yes, you can. But don't do like what David Pukta did.
Just shake your head.
I don't know if those of you that were here last year when he got up and wanted to bring up, I'm not even going to say the words anymore. What he was mentioning is a classified technology. It's a weapons technology, and he was using it and dabbling with it, but that can have dire consequences because there are powers that be that do not want that technology out in the public sector for obvious reasons. It's great if you use this stuff for energy. I mean, I've tried my best to take things that were intended to be weaponized and using it for generating energy, because that's really the best use for it, in my opinion. Yeah. Are they what? They're grown, huh? Yeah, come on.
Are the crystals you're talking about Vogel cut crystals? Marcel Vogel crystals?
They're germanium. Grown, they grow them in a reactor chamber.
Are they cut specifically? Specifically cut crystals?
They are cut.
Is the
Once they're grown, they are cut.
And is the geometry similar to a Vogel cut crystal?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I went to the lab and looked at how they grow these crystals, and they showed me the reactors, but I couldn't look inside one, you know. I saw the machines that process the grown crystal wafers, and when they're done, they do cut them up. I don't even know the technology they use to cut them up. All I care about is what the substrate they're on, and what they're doped with, and what they're coated with at the end. Because I can share some of that. We do grow it on a gold substrate, and we do cover it with a thin layer of gold so that it can gather the energy over the entire surface of the crystal. 24 karat gold. And then that is brought out to the edges where we have point contacts to pick that up. That's the weak link in this whole new system, is the point contacts, because, they're point contacts, which means you have a physical contact being pressed against the crystal. And in the prototype unit, we were able to get 3 tests before the contacts failed. We weren't expecting 4.6, 4.7 amps out of a crystal that is 1 square centimeter in base diameter. I mean, yeah.
Could you limit it so it's not so detrimental to the crystal?
Well, with this technology, you're actually energizing it until the point where it goes into excitation. Just like a laser, you know, when you power a laser up to a point, then the laser beam comes on, you see glow coming from the crystal. This is the interesting point. When this thing is being brought up to level, the crystal actually glows. And when it reaches that threshold where if it was a laser, it would normally laze, that's when, boom, the voltage comes on, the output, and the glow goes away.
So this is anti-gravity. The technology.
I can't, no. But I wish I could share more. There's others involved in this. Financially, there's non-disclosure agreements between myself and the crystal manufacturers, because they are in business. They are in business with large industry, the military, the government, and if it got out that they were working on this type of technology, it could affect their business. So, huh? I didn't have time to. Like I said, when I sent in my information, you know, I had Bro Andrew actually told them what I was going to be covering. I was going to be the water spacker, the battery spacker, and I wanted to get into, again, you know, about the hydrogen technology. I no longer work on the hydrogen technology anymore. I gave that up a long time ago. I pretty much proceeded with that as far as I could get. That's, you know, still being manufactured. Bro Andrew provides those systems. He's got one out there at his table. They can also be used for generating breathing gas hydrogen, you know, hydrogen-oxygen blend. And that provides health benefits as well as the water. But the biggest thing is that I wanted to get out was this is going to be a breakthrough technology if we can get it out onto the market, if we don't get stopped. The powers that be. I mean, they'll find a way. Yes.
So I think part of the implication of her question was whether when they cut the crystals, they're cut in the sense of a gem cut, like whether the Vogel crystal's cut or it's tetrahedral cut or something. Is that you're talking about them being cut in a semiconductor sense?
Yes.
That they're cut like making chips and so forth.
Yes.
Not in gem.
It's not the same as like a silicone fab facility. The precision is about 10 times what a germanium fab facility is. A lot more precision, a lot smaller cuts being made. You're talking about dealing with very tiny fabs in silicone. Germanium, it's very large fabs, which is great because it makes it easy to work with.
Okay. Then I'd like it if you would go back to a point of terminology, because it helps us all to be able to talk the same language.
Okay.
Like, when you're talking about a scalar event, how can we understand your terminology of scalar, non-Hertzian longitudinal energy transfer versus what's conventional Hertzian?
Okay. Well, a scalar event, there is, like I said, there's a lot of confusion about scalar energy. Scalar energy isn't a specific energy. It is the use of an existing energy. That energy can be electromagnetic, it can be acoustic, it can be hydraulic in nature. It's any time where you create these transmission events where the transmitted signal arrives all at a target location at the same time to create an enhanced effect.
Is it those 3 things?
No. No, in fact, I shouldn't even mention this. I'll say a major corporation that controls a bunch of seismic stations, and they are capable of creating seismic pulses. And they have been known to fire these off all at a timed interval so that all of these pulses arrive at a target and create an earthquake or trigger an existing fault to go off. I don't want to, I can't provide the name of the company because it's a very large corporation that's in control of that system. That is a scalar weapon, but it is done with seismic energy, which is pressure waves through the earth. Just like HARP, radio waves in the atmosphere. You can do the same thing in water. Nikola Tesla, when he developed that little earthquake machine, they used to, shake the bridge, shake the building, that was not scalar. That was resonance. He timed the pulses to create a train of resonance pulses, so it built up to the point where the thing started shaking. Yes.
I know they use germanium for all kinds of comm processes, but why did you choose uranium?
Germanium?
Germanium as your crystal as opposed to anything else?
The work of Thomas Henry More. The Swedish stone.
Is that why you picked it?
No, but it's one of the few elements that interact with non-Hertzian energy on an everyday basis.
Oh, really? And how exactly does it do that, you think?
Because of its symmetry. It has a sacred geometry within its crystalline structure.
Okay.
So does a lot of our functions in our body. We have cells and DNA that interact all the time with non-Hertzian energy. It drives many metabolic processes that are not known to science. They don't understand how things happen, how you get transmutation from one element to another. There's the answer right there. They have documented cases where they have people that are in comas, that are on life support. They don't give them any potassium because they have a problem with their blood potassium levels, their serum potassium levels going up, even though they're not provided any potassium in their diet. All they're given, there's sodium chloride in the solutions. Well, the body's transmuting potassium from somewheres. So I myself have to go in for blood work quite often, And, you know, I was in pretty bad shape last year, health-wise. And I've been drinking my water faithfully, as well as trying to eat right. And I had been diagnosed with congestive heart failure, pulmonary edema. I'm not wearing oxygen. My legs aren't all swelled up and weeping fluid anymore. So I can personally vouch for how this technology has changed my life. Yeah.
I
Yes.
just wanted to talk about that weather event that Vernon was talking about that you briefly mentioned. Is it feasible then that this is the weather that we're experiencing? I'm from Canada, but is it possible that this is actually being created right now?
Yes.
And do you believe that to be true, given your experience?
Knowing the players involved, yes. I would say that weather manipulation is being done. I can't say who or why. Utilizing the HARP type technology.
I read an article a long time ago that said the Russians did do experiments with the weather, and and about that same time the U.S. was trying to do it here, but decided that creating tornadoes would cause too many lawsuits, so they gave up on it. But you're saying they may not have.
You're talking about the Russian woodpecker, aren't you?
I'm not sure if people get the Science Channel, but there's a series that I think is still on called What on Earth? Some people actually recognize that that is an amazing show. And I shared with Bob one episode. I even took photos of the TV screen saved in our DVR because they were documenting a scene. This is a weather satellite recording of some concentric lines over Australia during the drought, a month-long drought. And the concentric lines appeared on the weather satellite. This is a national satellite they downloaded from. Meteorologists scratching their head, couldn't figure it out. It started pouring rain the very next day. Yeah. And they showed the photos that the meteorologist had recorded, and they basically showed lines going together to a point, and that's exactly where the rain occurred. Of course, none of the experts could figure it out, so they left that particular episode as, we don't know what happened, but this is the facts, and then they move on to the next episode, you know?
I looked at those images.
Bob actually clarified it very clearly.
Yeah, I looked at those images, and it was a scalar event.
And it was a nice, humanitarian effort they put in, but it flooded the place when there was a drought, and, it's like the opposite problem.
Yeah, sort of like what we had happen out in California.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you talk about your electric car and how far you're getting along with the self-driving, self-powered car?
Well, I was deferred by the cost of the batteries, number one, and number two, the high cost of the crystals that I was working with. I met with a manufacturer yesterday, and they agreed to work with me under a mutual NDA that they'll help me develop crystals with doping that's more advantageous to what I'm trying to do with it, and so that we can work together. But again, they're working with major players globally, and they don't want to jeopardize that. So I'm not going to mention anything because obviously this is being recorded and will be out in the public domain. So yes, I am making progress, and hopefully, by this time next year, we'll have that buggy running. I wanted to bring it here and actually set it up on jack stands and have the system turning the wheels, because once you know how much energy you can yield from a given area, you can set the speed control and let it set at that. It's a computerized system. Sometimes things don't fare so well, though, with computerized drive-by-wire systems, just like fly-by-wire. I had a malfunction that put me into a tree at wide open throttle. Yeah, broke a rib, but yeah, I survived. And it was just a month and a half after I had triple bypass surgery. So, yeah.
So you've mentioned that the germanium crystals are very important, and we can all piece together other clues that have been left. But obviously, silicone parts always fry in these types of devices, whether it's what you're doing or what many of others are. How intensely fast could semiconductors of germanium handle? How fast could the pulses of rise time, fall time kind of handle?
They could actually exceed the speed of silicone devices. I mean, we're talking about literally quantum resonance. Yeah. To give you an idea of how fast, and they can pick that up and actually do something with it. Of course, the semiconductors of old, didn't have that type of capability. The cat whisker diodes, the little germanium diodes that were used in crystal diode radios. My interest in germanium actually peaked back in the crystal diode days when I was able to use germanium devices that would actually build up enough power from the antenna to power an amplifier stage to run a speaker. So not only did I have an earphone type crystal diode radio, but I had an amplified crystal diode radio that was self-powered. That can be done. But you have a hard time trying to find high-powered germanium devices these days. I did buy some from Russia. They still have the law in effect that they're not allowed to ship military surplus hardware to the U.S., and these were Cold War era surplus germanium devices. And I did a lot of my research with those devices. I don't know if many of you remember the little non-Hertzian energy detector I brought last year with the meter, where you could read the non-Hertzian emissions of devices. Well, that meter used germanium semiconductor that was sourced from Russia. Yes.
I just have a question about your water smacker, too.
Yes.
It's twofold. One is it built to be hardwired like at the kitchen sink? And two is, what is its price point?
Okay, the original water smacker, okay, I believe he's selling them online for $350, but he's got a show special for $300 for this particular model. The Pro, it has a 120 volt cord. It is not UL listed. This device, because it's a 12 volt device, you can actually run it in a car. The device doesn't have to be UL listed. The wall wart transformer that we use with that is UL listed, and that's the only part that has to be UL listed. But this one is not UL listed. It is considered an experimental device. These are at $1,000.
Could it be plumbed right to the source of your water from your home, for instance?
No. What it's designed to do, you should have brought a bottle. We put a bottle of water on the countertop, essentially, with the lid of it off. That depends upon the power of the device. When you first do start off with a new bottle of water, and I typically use a 1.5 liter bottle. It's Crystal Geyser bottled water that's bottled in Benton, Tennessee, about 30 miles from where I live. It's a spring that comes from a mountain that is over the line from where this bottling company is. The water comes down the mountain onto their property. So they collect that water and they bottle it. That size bottle, 1.5 liter bottle in one of these, takes 2 days to initially charge. What I recommend people to do is then pour out half the water, refill it with the same water from another bottle, put it back in. It'll be charged the next day. This device here uses... Yeah, because once water is charged, it's interacting with the non-Hertzian environment, so it charges up so much faster. And actually, you can drink it right away, but it won't be fully charged. It won't be fully microclustered. The microclustering is what takes the time. The charging of the water doesn't take time at all. I mean, it's very quick. The microclustering, like I said, with the amount of water that we were using, the 1.5 liter, it takes about 24 hours to become fully microclustered. Now, you get health benefits from charged water. I'm sure you all have seen Vernon Ross table out there, the family table, their water charging system, it charges up the water, and they use water that actually has beneficial minerals added to it. It's a better system if you want to drink that water because it has all these monoatomic elements in it that are good for you. My system doesn't do that, but what my system can do is it can, if your source water has these minerals in it, ormus, orbitally rearranged monatomic elements, it will make them available. It will actually allow them to come out as a metallic gold. But I think that it's better just to drink it as it is, because that's what God intended for us, is to have this benefit from this water, to absorb it in that manner. I don't go out and I do it just for demonstration purposes. I did it last year where we did the Ormus thing, where we showed that we could actually precipitate platinum metal group metals out of water. And I can do that. That's not a problem. But that's not why I do it. And I don't do it to sell the minerals, because I believe that violates the purpose of why those minerals were put on this planet for us. This particular unit, 8 hours to fully charged and fully microstructured state. And it is drinkable after an hour. It's not fully microclustered, but it is fully charged at that point. Bro Andrew had a nice experience on one of the prototypes last year. I had it up in the hotel room. We had just plugged it in. We had it, I think we had it down here for the demonstration. Anyways, I had Thomas take it up to the room and plug it in. And we went up there an hour later, and it blew spark about that long when he stuck his finger in the bottle. The spark is not the important thing. Literally, it's not the spark, because the spark, that just indicates the system's working. The benefits are from the non-Hertzian part, which you don't feel, you don't notice. Yes?
When you talk about charged clustered water, is that distinct from charged separated water in the sense that Pollack is talking about?
And who?
Gerald Pollack. He's done a lot of work with charged separated, electrically charged separated waters. He's made crystals. What does your pH look like, and how long does it last? Does it raise the pH and keep it there for a long time?
It raises the pH. It typically lasts for, well, with the original we were talking about, which was at the 1 watt level, we were getting 3 days.
3 days? But the
3
pH
days.
stays the same?
Now we're because we've changed the way the system works. I've actually changed manufacturers and on the modules. And the ones we use now, we typically get 5 to 7 days. But it's one of those things, it decays with time. It gets worse and worse. I take this water and I bottle it. I pour it into containers and take it with me. I brought a gallon from home with me.
Right.
And the water, the higher powered one stays, of course, charged longer. But like anything, as it sits, it decays. One of the other advantages of microclustering water, it erases any energy patterns that are in the water. So it comes back down to just basic water molecules that are separate. They're not clustered up.
Okay.
And one of the health benefits, as I mentioned, is it can go into the cells and flush out toxins.
When you set this water down beside a normal tap water or whatever source you use, does it evaporate at the same rates, and does it absorb carbon dioxide at the same rates?
That hasn't been tested as far as I know. I haven't done any testing like that. But one thing we did notice is that once the water's been erased, it's an open slate, okay? Without memory. It's been erased. So Thomas, took a bottle out of the water smacker, put another one in, and he set it in his fridge. And in the morning, we had some water from the water smacker, and I'm like, I'm tasting citrus. Did you add some, lemon juice or something in the water? Because, we do that like to the smoothie, put a lot of lemon juice in it, or lime juice. He said, no. I said, what was it sitting next to? It was sitting next to a bottle of orange juice. It has absorbed an imprint of the orange juice energy pattern, and it had taken on that taste. And there's been experimentation where people have done this using, erased water essentially and putting it next to a bottle of vodka, and they drink the water after it absorbed the energy. And they would get drunk, but they would not have a hangover, and they would not test positive for alcohol on a and now there's people that are doing the same thing with hemp, marijuana. They're using the energy by putting it next to it and imprinting that on the water, and they pass it around the room, and the whole room gets high from drinking this water, yet they don't test positive for THC. So, yes. The only reason I put the cords on them is because I wanted to show the difference. This uses a wall wart, and this one plugs directly into the wall. The top's been removed from the bottle. You set it down. You put this over the bottle, just like that, and then you, of course, plug it in, turn on the switch.
And in plastic.
Yeah. Plastic works really good for this. You can use other materials. Don't use metal. Do not use metal. Glass works. Not as good at holding the energy pattern, though. Yeah. What's funny is I was doing a test, and I took some water from one of these Pro models, and I poured it into a glass. Normally, if you don't want to get a shock, you don't drink it from the bottle that you charged it in. You would pour it into a glass or a cup, and I poured it into a glass, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, and I go to take a drink, and I get popped, on the lip. I'm like, wow, my energy level must be down. Well, I can imagine. I was traveling for 3 days, and if you notice that you don't get zapped anymore from drinking the water, it's probably because your body doesn't need the energy anymore, because your body, your cells, the water in your cells is already charged up. The interstitial fluid. If you have any problems with bloating from interstitial fluid buildup, this is a good way to get rid of it, because your body will discard that macroclustered water in favor of the microclustered water. So the water that's macroclustered is in your interstitial fluid. That's the space between the cells. That water can bloat you, yet you can still be dehydrated. Your cells can still be dehydrated because that water is not bioavailable to the cells, whereas microstructured water is.
So it only takes on the imprint of the liquid, not like plastic or something like that.
It can take on the imprint of many things. There's a reason why we use a very thin layer of aluminum inside. It's enough to create the field. It's a resonance field between the center rod and the outer shell. If you use a thick aluminum tube, you're going to end up with aluminum imprint in the water. And as we know, aluminum is not so healthy. Dementia, Alzheimer's, is typically caused by aluminum calcite crystals growing in the brain. There is also an alternative, and that is from titanium. Machines such as the Kangen, they run a current through the water, and you get an alkali water and an acidic water, and you drink the alkali water and you toss the acidic water out or use it for cleaning or whatever you want to do with it. The titanium passivates. Anytime you have a system that uses titanium plates, it passivates. What that means is it oxidizes. And that titanium dioxide ends up in the water. Titanium dioxide or titanium oxide, either one of those, can do just like aluminum and can form titanium calcite crystals in the brain, which cannot be chelated out. Whereas regular aluminum oxide will come in contact with calcium, and there has to be an element present, either chlorine, fluorine, or there's one other one, I can't remember it right now. Anyways, maybe I need to chelate it. Anyways, these elements, fluoride being the worst, fluorine causes calcium to bond with these metals and form these crystals in the brain. And you have to break those bonds. And the way to chelate that out is Epsom salts. You can soak in it. Your body, your skin is the largest organ on the body. It will absorb the magnesium and allow the toxins to be removed. The physical function is that the magnesium bonds with the aluminum and forms manganese, which the body expels. So you can drink it, but if you do too much, it is a laxative. It'll give you the runs. But if you do it through a bath, there's less effects. Because if you drink it, your body may not be able to get rid of the toxins fast enough, and you may end up, I've seen people get rashes from the skin trying to get rid of these toxins.
How long do you soak?
It's your preference. The longer, the better. Yeah. I don't know. I do the drinking thing. It's easier for me. I don't have a bathtub, so I have to drink it and do it the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I have
Yes.
two questions.
Yes.
The first question is an add-on question to an earlier question that somebody asked regarding the terminology.
Yes.
So one of the words or phrases that is used is torsion fields.
Torsion fields.
I think these probably came from the Russian side.
Yeah. Torsion fields can mean many things. You can have gravitational torsion fields, you can have electric torsion fields, and you can have magnetic torsion fields.
How does this relate to non-Hertzian?
Well, non-Hertzian, you can have a non-Hertzian torsion field. I mean, it's all about how you apply the energy. I don't want to get into one of the experiments that I did, but you can create an energy vortex, and that is a torsion field.
All right, the second question was the use of the aluminum. Is
Yes.
that because it reflects the non-Hertzian waves?
Yes. And by using a very thin layer, if you go too thin, it's ineffective. It doesn't create an effective ground, essentially, around it to counterpoise for the center rod. If you go too thick, then it starts becoming a pattern that the water will absorb. The water won't absorb any patterns as long as it's in the charger and it's on. And you cannot overcharge water. It will only charge up to a certain point, and that's where it will stay. Leaving it any longer doesn't do any good, but it doesn't do any harm either. You can't overcharge water, right? It's 18.8 stainless steel, food grade stainless steel. If you ever get any black oxidation on the surface, it's not black mold. I haven't had any problems with it. We haven't had any complaints, but someone else that I had worked with he wanted to become a vendor for these, and he sent some out, and he had some sent back, and they had what they called black mold in it, and he actually brought it to me, what was it, like a week, 2 weeks ago, and I looked at it, I said, that's aluminum oxide. He says, it stops working. I said, that's because the aluminum oxidized away. I said, if you're in an environment where it's so humid that you have that problem, you can actually spray the inside of it, with an enamel or any type of paint to protect the aluminum. It doesn't matter. It won't hurt the function of it. You don't really want to paint the rod, No, don't wipe it, because that will remove it, and you'll lose the function of the device. Yeah, let it stay black. It won't hurt anything. The water doesn't come in contact with that. It only comes in contact with the rod.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much, BobBoyce.